Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another week of shows here at the Call Sheet Daily Podcast at the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. We are finished with the NFL preseason, mercifully finished with the NFL preseason, but now we have what is probably going to feel like an incredibly long wait until the regular season kicks off in about 2 weeks, slightly less than 2 weeks. But it gives us an opportunity to reflect on what we just witnessed. What did we just see over the last month or so? What did we learn from the NFL preseason? It's not exciting, but it's instructive. And that's our show today as we dive in on some of the things that we learned over the last month that may help us understand what's going to happen in the coming season a little bit better. I think right at the top, the thing that's always an interesting question heading into the preseason or throughout the preseason is how much do you play your starters? And we saw at least one team, the Cincinnati Bengals, take an unconventional route in terms of answering that question. The Bengals played starting quarterback Joe Burrow, the franchise guy, and his supporting cast much more than is normally done in the preseason. Burrow in the first preseason game played an entire quarter and played several series in the subsequent games. And the results were stellar. The Bengals starting offense looked great. Now, why are they doing this? Why did they take this route? Because over the last several seasons, Cincinnati is a combined 5-15 in September, which obviously means that they're getting off to terrible starts. I mean, if you're 1-3 at the end of every September, you've now given yourself this hill to climb throughout the rest of the season. Your margin for error gets very small. And Cincinnati, a couple of the last seasons, has finished the year hot, playing really good football in December. But the early holes that they've dug themselves have caused them to not be able to qualify for the playoffs. So their philosophy is just like, let's go for it early so we can be at our best, or at least firing on all cylinders in September. Fortunately for the Bengals, they got through without any major injuries. I mean, that was really the question that everybody was asking was, is this experiment worth it? If Joe Burrow or T. Higgins or Jamar Chase gets hurt, they're going to be second guessed till the cows come home. Well, they didn't. They didn't get hurt. They got through it. They looked really good on offense, and maybe it will benefit them. Now, most teams, particularly with their star quarterbacks, chose the more traditional route, which was to play them on a limited basis or not at all. I mean, Josh Allen in Buffalo, Matthew Stafford with the Rams. Now, he was dinged up, so he's a little bit of an exception. But Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, those guys didn't play at all. That's fairly standard procedure. One quarterback who didn't play at all, which is a little surprising to me anyway, is Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, simply because it's a new scheme, it's a new team, new teammates, etc. I thought maybe Rodgers would get a little bit of play in the preseason to acclimate himself at game speed to Pittsburgh's system, but the Steelers chose probably to err on the side of caution with the 41-year-old Rodgers, and he didn't play at all. So, what lessons are we learning? Well, we're learning that some teams are willing to roll the dice when it comes to their starters in the preseason. All right, now, what about the quarterbacks? That is the marquee position in this sport. And while we didn't see a lot from the starters in preseason, we had some interesting numbers to look at. All this stuff should be taken with a grain of salt. These are preseason numbers, but I just thought for the sake of interest, we'd throw this out there. Who were the 5 highest rated quarterbacks in this NFL preseason based on quarterback rating? These are all quarterbacks who threw at least 25 passes. So for quarterbacks who threw at least 25 passes in the preseason, who had the highest QBRs? Number 5, Jackson Dart, New York Giants. 113.1 QBR. He went 32 out of 47, 372 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Looked great. Jackson Dart looked great this preseason. More on him in a minute. Number 4, Skylar Thompson, Pittsburgh Steelers, 116.5 QBR, 41 out of 56, 498 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He looked really good. It'll be very interesting to see what the Steelers do with their quarterback position in the backup department anyway, because you have Rodgers as 1. You probably have Mason Rudolph as the number 2. The Steelers really liked rookie Will Howard from Ohio State, who they took in the 6th round, but he broke a finger on his throwing hand early in camp and didn't play at all in the preseason. That opened the door for Skylar Thompson to come in, former backup in Miami, and Thompson played some great football. So I don't know, do the Steelers stash Howard on the injured list and keep Thompson on the roster for a little bit? Do they cut Thompson, try and get him onto their practice squad, but he'll probably be picked up by another team? Be very interesting to see what happens with Skylar Thompson. Number 3, Kyle Allen in Detroit, 123.6 QBR. Kyle Allen on 44 pass attempts averaged 9.1 yards per attempt. That's a lot of yards per attempt. I mean, anything over the mid-7s is a lot. 9.1 is a lot of yards per attempt. So Detroit was obviously pushing the ball down the field successfully with Kyle Allen. Number 2, another Giants quarterback, Tommy DeVito. 126.2 rating, 30 out of 38, 323 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. And the number 1 quarterback in the NFL preseason, Jarrett Stidham, Denver Broncos, 143 rating. He averaged 9.9 yards per pass attempt, 10 yards attempt, 10 yards per pass attempt for Jarrett Stidham in Denver. Now, can we read anything into these numbers? Does it mean anything? I mean, maybe a little bit, you know? I mean, Jarrett Stidham's numbers probably don't mean much because he's going to be the backup there. I don't think Skylar Thompson's mean a lot for anyone other than Skylar Thompson, right? He played himself into maybe a bigger opportunity. But for the Giants to have 2 quarterbacks on that list, Jackson Dart and Tommy DeVito, those 2 guys went a combined 62 out of 85. With 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. That's pretty darn good. Brian Daboll may have found his sweet spot. They've got some weapons on offense. The Giants were one of the most impressive teams in the preseason, going undefeated, outscoring their opponents 107-47. Maybe they're onto something in New York. Right? Maybe we can read a little something into this about the Giants. Maybe we can read a little something into this about the Detroit Lions. Kyle Allen's strong preseason. All the talk about Detroit is, they lost Ben Johnson, they lost Aaron Glenn. Can Detroit reload? Really encouraging preseason for their offense. So maybe the Lions are going to be okay in the absence of Ben Johnson. All right, what other quarterback situation was interesting? Well, Cleveland's was very interesting for sure, as they went through the process of trying to identify a starter. Joe Flacco was named that starter. That's not really a big surprise. I think the big news in Cleveland is that Dylan Gabriel firmly beat out Shedeur Sanders. I think Gabriel's going to wind up as the number 2 on the depth chart because Kenny Pickett, who's the other quarterback there, didn't play at all in the preseason with a hamstring injury. So my suspicion is they've already said they're going to keep all 4 guys, which is interesting in and of itself. You don't see teams keep 4 quarterbacks very often, if ever. But I think the pecking order will go Flacco, at least at the beginning. Flacco, Gabriel, Pickett, number 3, kind of as Gabriel insurance. If Dylan Gabriel doesn't work out, you've got a guy who's got a bunch of NFL starts under his belt in Kenny Pickett. And then Sanders as the developmental guy. Gabriel beating out Sanders, really not a surprise. All along, all throughout the process, Kevin Stefanski said that, Shedeur Sanders has a lot to learn. Dylan Gabriel, a lot of things that they liked about him and how he fits in their system. So that's not really surprising, but it was interesting to see it play out on the field. The other quarterback situation of major interest is in Indianapolis, where Daniel Jones beats out Anthony Richardson. And I think this is more a question of what's next for Anthony Richardson. Is he going to need a change of scenery? Is he going to need to go somewhere else to kickstart or revitalize his NFL career? Remember, he is younger than many of the quarterbacks taken in this year's draft. He is younger than Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck and Cam Ward. I mean, he's a young guy who came out of Florida after just 3 years out of high school. Some of those other guys spent 5 and 6 years in college. So are you ready to give up on a guy who's still just 23, about to turn 24 years old? I don't know. That'll be an interesting thing to monitor. Where does Anthony Richardson ultimately end up? All right, what about rookies? Who are some of the rookies who showed star potential this preseason? That's always an interesting thing to look at. I'll start with Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State, who looked great in Tampa. Really, I watched him when the Buccaneers played the Eagles in preseason week 2, and I just thought, man, he looks sharp. He is a great route runner. He's going to get to learn the NFL game from a Hall of Famer in Mike Evans. He's in a passing offense with a quarterback named Baker Mayfield, who's going to be able to throw the ball around. I think it's a great spot for Emeka Egbuka. And he will start in the starting lineup with Jalen McMillan being injured now. He'll step into the starting lineup and get lots of targets early. His Ohio State teammate, Travion Henderson, looks like a big play waiting to happen up in New England. He had a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown in their preseason opener. He had some other big splash plays. Travion Henderson, I think, is going to be a guy who really opens up that Patriots offense. Another running back, Ashton Genty. No surprise here. First running back off the board in this year's draft. He goes into Las Vegas in what's going to be a run-centric Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly offense, and was physical, man. I mean, you almost have to worry a little bit. Is he too physical? Is he seeking out too much contact? I mean, he seemed to be going out of his way to run guys over. And you may need to learn some discretion in that area in the NFL. But Ashton Genty looks like he's going to be 1,000-yard back out of the gate. Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan, who goes to the Bears. They really made a concerted effort to target him. We know how much Ben Johnson liked the tight ends up in Detroit. And it looks like now he's going to make a concerted effort to feed them the football, particularly Loveland in Chicago. Might be a guy you want to target if you're a fantasy guy. You know, a target on your fantasy team, Colston Loveland. And then a couple of defenders. Derek Harmon, the number 1 pick for the Steelers, looked fabulous. And Pittsburgh probably dodged a bullet. He left their preseason finale over the weekend with a knee injury when they took him out on a cart. He had the towel over his head. He seemed to be visibly upset. And you thought, oh my God, that's a season-ending knee injury. Fortunately for the Steelers, turns out just to be a knee sprain. He's going to miss a few weeks, probably miss the opener, but should be back fairly soon. He looks tremendous. Technique-wise, looks like a guy who's already been in the league for several years. And then in Philly, Jihad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama, who coordinator Vic Fangio is probably going to get to use kind of as a Swiss Army knife and move him all over the place. Fangio loves those versatile athletic types. I've mentioned before, I coached against Jihad Campbell when he was a high school kid, and he was a wide receiver. So he's now a 242-pound NFL linebacker who was a high school wide receiver. That just hints at the athleticism that he possesses. He's going to be a fun piece to watch in that Philadelphia defense. All right, what did we learn about teams? Can we take anything away from the performance of some teams this preseason? Well, the Ravens went 3-0. That is not shocking at all. They are 27-6 in the preseason since 2017. That's mind-boggling. Man, John Harbaugh, I should say, he really gets them ready to roll early in the year. 3-0 out of the gate. Great start for them, as always. Does it mean anything? Probably not. It means they're great in August. They're usually great in the regular season as well. The question will be, can they be great in the postseason? We mentioned the Giants looked fabulous. Had a 60 point scoring differential in their preseason games. Will that translate to anything? They've been terrible for the last several seasons, but they've assembled a pretty strong defense, and they now have some interesting weapons on offense. And Jackson Dart, at least through 3 preseason games, looks like the class of the rookie quarterback group. So they'll be interesting to watch. The Bengals. We mentioned their offense. Well, unfortunately, you got to play both sides of the ball. And on defense, Cincinnati, who went 1-2 in the preseason, gave up an average of 172 rushing yards per game and 31 points per game in the preseason, when the scoring is typically low. If you look at the over-unders for many of these preseason games, they're in the 30s. Why? Because offenses tend to be bad early on because the starters are resting, the backup quarterbacks stink, and they don't score a lot of points. And yet Cincinnati gave up 31 points per game in the preseason. 2 backups. That does not bode well for what they're doing defensively. Yet they look fabulous on offense. So again, man, I'm not a betting guy, but I'd bet the over on a lot of Bengals games. And then the Washington Commanders. Look, I know it's the preseason, but they went 0-3 and got outscored 109-38. They got outscored by 71 points, or an average of about 24 points per game in 3 preseason games. And again, they did not play their starters much. And again, you can't read too much into the preseason, but still, man, wouldn't you like to see a little more success than that? Are you a little concerned if you're a Commanders fan that you got shellacked in 3 straight preseason games? Just something to watch. All right, kickers. Holy moly. The kickers went off this preseason. There were 4 field goals of 60-plus yards this preseason, including a 70-yarder. Cam Little hit a 70-yarder. Cam Little also hit a 59-yarder. 3 other guys hit kicks from 60 or more. Tyler Loop, that's a name you probably don't know. Well, Tyler Loop looks like the guy, he's a rookie, looks like the guy who's going to come in and replace Justin Tucker in Baltimore. He hit 5 field goals of 50 or more yards in the preseason. Remember when 50-plus used to be a long field goal and it was about a 50-50 shot whether you're going to make it? Kickers are now making it at a clip of about 80%. That's ridiculous, man. The kickers have gotten too good. Narrow the goalpost, people. That is a hill I'm going to die on. Narrow the goalpost. We got to narrow the darn goalpost. Make it harder for the kickers. All right, a couple more things real quick. The hold-ins. The 3 hold-in guys, right? Micah Parsons, Trey Hendrickson, and Terry McLaurin. No movement on any of those guys through the entire preseason. I was 100% certain one of those guys would either get signed or traded. Something would happen. Nope. Here we are, man. The owners are waiting it out. And we still have 2 weeks before the opener. And I would still bet a lot of money that at least one of these guys, something happens. We're not going to be status quo 2 weeks from now. But it is a little surprising. Maybe not so much with Parsons and Hendrickson, because Jerry Jones and Mike Brown are stubborn owners who like things done their way and probably don't want to blink. But I'm surprised in the case of Terry McLaurin. After the Commanders just went through a preseason where their offense didn't look great, they got shellacked on the scoreboard. You'd think, man, that this is a team that believes it can compete for an NFC championship. I'm surprised that they haven't done a deal with Terry McLaurin. All right, I'll end on this. The virtual measurement system. It's stupid. It's stupid. The graphics are like from a goofy video game from the 90s. It takes way too long for them to get all the eyes measured up, the computer eyes, and trot that stupid graphic out there to tell you that it's a first down when you 99% of the time you already know if it's a first down. But the biggest problem is it doesn't address the problem. The problem is not stretching out the chain to let you know if it's a first down or not. The problem's spotting the football. If you have a computer system that can infallibly tell you where to spot the football, I'm all for that. But I kind of like the old school drama of them like pulling out the chains and stretching the chain, especially when it's really close on a 4th down play and all the players are down on their hands and knees and trying to get a bird's eye view of it. And then they stretch it out and it's 2 lengths short and the defense goes nuts. I like that. The virtual thing is goofy and it's stupid and it doesn't solve the problem, which is the human fallibility that comes with spotting a football. So I hope that this will be a flash in the pan. All right, there it is. Preseason in the books. Learned a lot. Does any of it matter? Well, I don't know. We're going to find out in 2 weeks. A little bit less than 2 weeks. It'll be exciting. Hey, going to be a great week of shows here on the Call Sheet Daily. Whiteboard Wednesday, we're going to talk about game planning. Our Ocean City Red Raiders football team. We kick off our season on Thursday. Battle at the Beach in Ocean City. We get going then, and we're in game plan week. what does that look like? We're going to take a deep dive on that. What does game plan week look like for a coaching staff? And then on Thursday, we are going to debut the portal. That is our college football show. And we will preview the big Ohio State-Texas clash on Saturday. Can't wait for that one. That's going to be awesome. All right, until then, hope everybody has a great day. Thank you, as always, for joining us here. Hey, if you like this podcast, like us on Spotify, subscribe. It helps with our ratings, our whatever the heck they call that stuff. You know, the way that they do the rankings on Spotify. So if you get a chance, man, do that. I would appreciate it. Until then, or until tomorrow, I should say. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.